Right, so nothing quite screams irony alert quite like Israel, a state that is a decades-long occupier of Palestinian and Syrian territory and is currently engaging in a genocide that has killed more than 20,000 people, including more than 7,000 children, and then calling someone else a danger to world peace. But this is what they've done, playing the anti-Semitism card whilst they did it, pointing the finger and both accusations directly at United Nations General Secretary Antonio Guterres for triggering Article 99 of the UN Charter. Always the victim, never the aggressor, never the one at fault. This excuse, this immature babyish behaviour by Israeli spokespeople and politicians has to stop, has to be called out, because this is how they always eventually get their way, that and their lobbying. But they simply must be held for account for what they have done and what they are doing now. The plight of Palestine, a two-state solution, can never be achieved for as long as Israel is not being held to account for what it is doing. This is all the UN General Secretary has proposed, and this is how they reacted to that. Right, so UN head honcho Antonio Guterres has invoked Article 99 of the UN Charter. So let's start with that. Let's start with what has got Israeli politicians and their Zionist supporters knickers in a twist. What is Article 99, first of all? Is it anything really major? Is it a big red button that will spur the UN into actually passing a resolution? No, not really. It is a discretionary power, as much of the power of the UN is. It's an escalation, basically, in how bad the situation is out there, in the opinion of Antonio Guterres. Article 99 is a power the UN Secretary General has in regards to the UN Security Council, which, as we know, has now tried several times to establish a ceasefire in Israel and Gaza under the rules of the UN Charter, which is, in and of itself, regarded as an international treaty. So that if such a resolution were passed, countries would be bound to it. Unfortunately, as we viewers of my recent video that covered this will know, the UN Security Council has 5 permanent members, and any one of them can veto any Security Council resolution. And the United States, one of those permanent members, repeatedly have kept doing that on this issue. So no ceasefire has been able to be implemented in Israel, who are UN members as well. Article 99 states that the Secretary-General may bring to the attention of the Security Council any matter which, in his opinion, may threaten the maintenance of international peace and security. That's it. This is the point Guterres is at. He's never triggered Article 99 before, and actually, despite the discretionary nature of it, the significance of triggering Article 99 actually shouldn't be ignored. Though I might have been a little bit flippant towards it when I introduced this subject and this explainer, but actually it is significant in one way, because the last time it was triggered was all the way back in 1971. So the fact is, it doesn't happen very often. In 1971, it was last triggered during the fighting in Pakistan that eventually led to the creation of the nation of Bangladesh. So it's quite a big thing for the UN to have done it. It is basically saying in no uncertain terms to the UN Security Council, the shit is royally hitting the fan here, get your thumbs out of your backsides and do something about this. It confers an obligation upon the President of the Security Council. This changes rotationally between the 5 permanent members and the 15 non-permanent member states, and currently the chair is held by Ecuador and the current President Jose Javier Delegasca Lopez Dominguez to chair a meeting under Article 99 of the UN Security Council. Guterres makes his reasons for triggering Article 99 bluntly clear in his letter to Dominguez, which says, "Dear Mr. President, I am writing under Article 99 of the United Nations Charter to bring to the attention of the Security Council a matter which, in my opinion, may aggravate existing threats to the maintenance of international peace and security. More than 8 weeks of hostilities in Gaza and Israel have created appalling human suffering, physical destruction, and collective trauma across Israel and the occupied Palestinian territory. More than 1,200 people were brutally killed, including 33 children, and thousands were injured in the abhorrent acts of terror by Hamas and other Palestinian armed groups on the 7th of October 2023, which I have repeatedly condemned. Some 250 people were abducted, including 34 children, more than 130 of whom are still captive. They must be immediately and unconditionally released. Accounts of sexual violence during the attacks are appalling. Civilians throughout Gaza face grave danger. Since the start of Israel's military operation, more than 15,000 people have reportedly been killed, over 40% of whom were children. Thousands of others have been injured. More than half of all homes have been destroyed. Some 80% of the population of 2.2 million have been forcibly displaced into increasingly smaller areas. More than 1.1 million people have sought refuge in UNRWA facilities across Gaza, creating overcrowded, undignified and unhygienic conditions. Others have nowhere to shelter and find themselves on the street. Explosive remnants of war are rendering areas uninhabitable. There is no effective protection of civilians. The healthcare system in Gaza is collapsing. Hospitals have turned into battlegrounds. Only 14 hospitals out of 36 facilities are even partially functional. The two major hospitals in South Gaza are operating at 3 times their bed capacity and are running out of basic supplies and fuel. They are also sheltering thousands of displaced persons. Under these circumstances, more people will die untreated in the coming days and weeks. Nowhere is safe in Gaza. Amid constant bombardment by the Israeli Defense Forces and without shelter or the essentials to survive, I expect public order to completely break down soon due to the desperate conditions, rendering even limited humanitarian assistance impossible. An even worse situation could unfold, including epidemic diseases and increased pressure for mass displacement into neighbouring countries. In Resolution 2712 of 2023, the Security Council calls for the scaling up of the provision of such supplies to meet the humanitarian needs of the civilian population, especially children. The current conditions are making it impossible for meaningful humanitarian operations to be conducted. We are nevertheless preparing options for monitoring the implementation of the resolution, even if we recognise that in the present circumstances that is untenable. Whilst delivery of supplies throughout Rafah continues, quantities are insufficient and have dropped since the pause came to an end. We are simply unable to reach those in need inside Gaza. The capacity of the United Nations and its humanitarian partners have been decimated by supply shortages, lack of fuel, interrupted communications, and growing insecurity. Humanitarian personnel have joined the vast majority of Gazan civilians in evacuating to South Gaza ahead of advancing military operations. At least 130 UNRWA colleagues have been killed, many with their families. We are facing a severe risk of collapse of the humanitarian system. The situation is fast deteriorating into a catastrophe with potentially irreversible implications for Palestinians as a whole and for peace and security in the region. Such an outcome must be avoided at all cost. The international community has a responsibility to use all its influence to prevent further escalation and end this crisis. I urge the members of the Security Council to press to avert humanitarian catastrophe. I reiterate my appeal for a humanitarian ceasefire to be declared. This is urgent. The civilian population must be spared from greater harm. With a humanitarian ceasefire, the means of survival can be restored and humanitarian assistance can be delivered in a safe and timely manner across the Gaza Strip. Please accept, Mr. President, the assurances of my highest consideration. Antonio Guterres. Of course, they've held meetings before. They've got nowhere. For as long as the US exercises its veto, for as long as their representative keeps putting their hand up in the air to veto, they never will. But now this has been triggered, this Article 99, thus raising the stakes amongst member states. If the US didn't already look bad enough for constantly blocking ceasefires, they will look a lot worse now that Article 99 has been invoked. But of course, the main point of this video is the reaction of Israel itself to what Guterres has done by invoking Article 99. Well, as the title to this video says, they think Guterres, after his letter, is a danger to world peace and is anti-Semitic. It's a mad statement in the face of the atrocity we're all witness to. This statement came from Israel's Foreign Minister Eli Cohen, who put out a tweet saying, Guterres' tenure is a danger to world peace. His request to activate Article 99 and the call for a ceasefire in Gaza constitutes support of the Hamas terrorist organisation and an endorsement of the murder of the elderly, the abduction of babies and the rape of women. Anyone who supports world peace must support the liberation of Gaza from Hamas. So, the UN Secretary General, by making his call for a ceasefire to stop the killing, to urge the Security Council to do something, for writing a strongly worded letter, basically, which is as much as he can do, is what it amounts to, is a Hamas supporter just for doing that, and a danger to world peace too. What he actually is a danger to Israel's ethnic cleansing and their genocide of Gaza continuing. Cohen speaks of abducting babies when his side left Palestinian babies in hospital incubators to die and decompose where they lay. Let's get it straight. Nobody asking for peace, asking for a ceasefire, can be a danger to peace. That's just nonsense. It is ridiculous. Israel just becomes more insultingly ridiculous as they get more and more desperate. They know they're losing the narrative for once. It might interest you to know how to measure that, incidentally. How about measuring it in terms of tourism? Israel has seen it fall by 76%, with an 80% drop in flights to Tel Aviv, and with job losses in the Israeli economy getting close to 1 million. all of it directly consequential of the attacks on Gaza in the aftermath of October 7th. Global opinion is with Guterres, and Israeli excuses are just angering people across the globe even more. No longer are people quite as scared as they once were of Israel accusing them of being anti-Semitic for opposing them, or anybody else in the media saying the same thing, when we can see that opposing them is to be a human, not a racist. Not that it has stopped them from trying, because it's always worked for them before, hasn't it? The Director General of the World Health Organization, Dr. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, put out a tweet in support of Guterres, triggering Article 99 incidentally, saying, "I support Secretary-General Antonio Guterres' letter to the UN Security Council invoking Article 99 and appealing for a ceasefire. Gaza's health system is on its knees and near total collapse. We need peace for health." But this elicited a response from Israel's Minister of Diaspora and Social Equality, of all people, frankly, with that brief, saying, "I strongly condemn Dr. Tedros joining UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres in his biased anti-Semitic stance. His World Health Organization is yet to condemn the use of hospitals in Gaza for keeping weapons and hostages, and WHO personnel assisting Hamas by turning a blind eye." So the World Health Organization are racist Hamas supporters ignoring the stories of weapons being hidden behind MRI machines and the like. Is that it? I can't imagine why medical professionals such as WHO won't accept metallic weaponry being hidden behind giant magnets as the truth Israel demand they accept. It truly eludes me. The ultimate shame, though, is that this is likely not going to change much. The UN Security Council will meet. They're obligated to do so now, but with the US doing a sterling trade in weaponry and armaments right now to Israel, they will still veto any notion of a ceasefire again and again, presumably until such time as Joe Biden decides to change his mind. I don't see how the UN can move past this, and actually the US are making them all look like a joke at this point. As much as people are boycotting Israel by way of tourism, by way of produce they buy, as much as we protest our political leaders over this, those supplying Israel, those deliberately blocking a path to peace, like the US, perhaps they need boycotting too. Solidarity to Antonio Guterres for doing what he can and for what he's done. I just hope I'm wrong and something can come out of this now. Thanks for watching. I hope you found this video useful. Please like, share and subscribe if you did. More content out daily. Please do have your say on this story in the comments below and be part of the conversation. Meanwhile, here's a video recommendation where ordinary people the country over took matters into their own hands, blockading arms manufacturers of Israeli equipment just yesterday to great effect, showing we can all do something. And I'll hopefully catch you on the next vid. Cheers, folks.